Welcome, dear viewers, to episode 14 of IBFD's Tax Takes series. This video series is dedicated to discussing various tax implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. In today's episode, we will be talking about the impact the pandemic has on VAT. VAT as a sales tax is influenced by different economic factors compared to income taxes. Consequently, some government measures are quite VAT specific. Today, we will be going through the most common VAT measure types, evaluating the pros and cons of these, considering whether the pandemic will create new VAT fraud types, and reflecting how this new situation might affect VAT processes in businesses. Joining me for the discussion is Jordi Sol, an international VAT consultant situated in Switzerland. He's also my former manager, so it's especially a pleasure to have you here now, Jordi. And let's really cut to the chase. And maybe we could start off with going through the typical VAT measures that were taken throughout the globe with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe you could mention a couple of recurring measure types.
Sure. So I would say that there is a group of common measures that have been taken for most of the countries, like postponing payment deadlines, acceleration VAT refund processes for businesses, and other compliance simplifications, like, for instance, for recapitulative statements or other VAT obligations like SAFT or even Intrastat. At an EU level, there was also the decision from the European Commission to exempt the importation of goods that have as an aim to combat the COVID. And tax administrations at the moment, so most of the countries, they decided that the tax administration should not impose any kind of penalties or interest and suspend the VAT debt collection. I would say that there is a second group of measures that they go more a bit in the direction of thinking out of the box and being a bit more creative, like the one in Denmark, that they decided that the VAT paid that has been due in the year previous to the pandemic can be converted into loans free of interest. In the Netherlands, they also approve a measure that they say that the hiring out of healthcare staff is out of the scope without limiting the right to deduct. So I think that it's a very nice measure too. And in Poland, for sure, they also went into bad debt relief, and they say, okay, for those of them that have outstanding debts, and now they have to increase their taxable amounts with regard to these debts, they can wait until next year, so they don't have to do it during 2020. So something that is also a very, very interesting approach, and maybe we can discuss later, Zsolt. There is a third group, and I'm finishing with this third group, that is about reduction of VAT rates. We have seen that many countries, they took the opportunity to reduce the VAT rate for e-publications, giving us a reasoning the COVID, something that I was a bit surprised because I don't really see a direction for reducing VAT rate to e-publications during the COVID, but it was well welcomed by the businesses. And we see that other countries, like, for instance, in Austria, UK, Germany, and Belgium, they have decided to cut the VAT rates for specific business sectors, accommodation, restaurants, cafes, the culture sector, etc. And among those countries, Germany took maybe a more aggressive approach, because they reduced for temporarily for 6 months the standard VAT rate from, if I remember well, from 19 to 16, and reduced VAT rate from 7 to 5 until the end of this year, something that has been a big change and a big challenge, as probably we will be discussing later for businesses.
Mm-hmm. These are all interesting measures, and if I would sum it up for myself, then I would say that then you have measures relating to administration and compliance, you have measures relating to cash flow, and then you have measures that are more affecting the consumers. Well, if you think about this, what would you see as the benefits of such measures, and maybe also the challenges?
I think, of course, the main benefits, and you just sum it up correctly. So the simplification of administrative obligations for the majority of businesses, this is a big benefit during this pandemic. Of course, businesses, I guess, during this month, they were probably busier with other more important issues than just filling in VAT returns. Don't forget that most of the businesses, they had to implement home office, and maybe they were not as used as other businesses. So for them, probably it was quite difficult to collect all the data to fill in the VAT returns. And of course, the most important benefit is to provide with cash flow relief to businesses. So definitely, this is a positive effect. And I would say that these measures we just mentioned before, they are more taking the direction for short-term measures. Mm-hmm. And I would prefer to see now tax administrations really taking long-term measures to really help businesses. You were also asking about the challenges, and the challenges. The first challenge I might think for businesses is to really keep track of all these measures, because this is really a big challenge. You see that the OECD, for instance, have in the website, there is a keep tracker. You see that tax administrations have done a great job trying to inform the taxpayers, because you can also find information in English in their websites, and they really have a specific section with regard to COVID and VAT. And of course, you see also other providers like, of course, IBFD, that is really keeping track and following up on a country basis. Another challenge, Zsolt, I would say, the temporary reduction of the VAT rates. This is a big challenge. Mm-hmm. It's a big challenge because it's not only about changing legislation, it's also about issuing circulars and interpretations from the tax administrations. So they really have to guide the taxable persons on the way. And for big businesses, this means that they really have to change their ERP systems. They have to change their pricing as well as their marketing brochures. And there will be more complexity in filling in the VAT returns, etc. We just saw that Germany has issued a circular, and what is happening with advance payments, what is the tax point, what happens with cancellation, with discounts, etc. So quite a challenging area. I remember the last time we were facing this, it was during the financial crisis during 2008, where a lot of countries, they decided to also reduce or to make changes in their VAT rates policies. And this was a big thing, a big challenge. And just to finalize, Zsolt, another complexity, and I was talking about discounts, cancellations. There have also been some moratoriums or even debt forgiveness, especially I would say in the area of renting real estate, for instance. So many businesses are not used to deal with this kind of scenarios, and now they really have to analyze what are the VAT consequences, what is the tax point, whether they have to put all these agreements in a document, what happens if there is a change of the VAT rate, what VAT rate we should apply or not. So all these kind of things, they really have to take into account by businesses, and to really invest time, train their people, and to really have a good look at these issues, because maybe later on they can have some problems with the tax administrations.
Yes, I guess it's also that during normal times, businesses can be more generous when it comes to their tax payments, but now you could say that every euro cent counts for the business to keep its head above the water.
I totally agree. I do think that businesses should be as as diligent as ever, and they really have to take care of their own business and their VAT obligations and see if they can take benefit from special schemes. Yeah, right.
So if you would be the legislator, what kind of measures would you taken into account all these pros and cons that you just discussed?
So, difficult question, but thank you for the opportunity to place me as a lawmaker. But talking about tax policy, I would say that the tax administration should provide to businesses with all the necessary tools to have an easy access to debt payment plans. So I think the postponement of VAT payments, this was very nice, but don't stop here, please. So after the lockdown, I do think that we should continue being business friendly. So tax administration should really be flexible with these debt payment plans. And again, as I said before, so the measures should not be addressed to a short term, but more to long term periods. So I do think that countries, they now have to look at their VAT systems and see if they can make somehow a stronger system, more in line with the principle of neutrality, and also really providing cash flow relief to their businesses. So we have special schemes that we see in the VAT directive, like for instance, VAT grouping, where some countries have taken a very strict approach with very complex requirements for businesses to have access to this VAT grouping. So maybe now it's time for member states to see whether they can impose other kind of conditions. It's true that the VAT directive says that it's not possible to apply VAT grouping for cross-border scenarios. Who knows? Maybe the European Commission takes a look at this scheme and maybe they decided to change it. And there is also another nice special scheme. This is more for SMEs, maybe the cash accounting scheme. So businesses can delay the VAT payment to the tax authorities until they receive the payment of the invoice. So that's a good scheme, but normally these have a double side of the coin. So you defer the VAT payment, but at the same time, you also see your right to deduct deferred. Not only that, so also clients that did not opt for this cash accounting scheme, they are also affected because they also see the right to deduct affected until the time they pay their invoices. So maybe some countries could also have a look at the implementation of this cash accounting scheme and make some amendments. I think that this would also give a cash flow relief to businesses. In some countries, we also see that the VAT refunds are not as quick as they should. So in some countries, we see that there is the carry forward system. So most of the time, you can request for a VAT refund at the end of the year. So this creates a cash flow tension for many businesses, and this is really a challenge for businesses. So I do think that those countries, they should have a look at this approach and change it. And bad debt relief, and now we see there is a pandemic, where there is a lockdown, probably a lot of unpaid invoices. In order to have access to the bad debt relief, you see that the conditions are quite strict. Even though now there is a trend, recently there was an ECJ judgment, the SCT case, I think, where they say, okay, look, don't really bother about formal requirements. The bad debt relief is still applicable, but this at a domestic level, it's quite hard to fight for this right. So I do think that maybe countries could ease and simplify the requirements to have access to this bad debt relief. Yeah.
Indeed. So basically what you're saying is that the tools are all there in the system. They should be more fine-tuned for this situation to adopt to it.
Totally agree, Joel, with this summary. Yeah.
And well, since we are talking about that the current system, it has the capacity to properly accommodate this pandemic. Well, the question arises, does this also mean that tax fraud schemes will remain unchanged, or will there be any kind of new schemes coming together with the pandemic?
Yeah, I don't really think that there will be new types of fraud, but probably what will happen is that, of course, we will see an increasement of the already existing types of fraud. So, of course, every time there is a crisis, and this time it's not a financial crisis, but it could be in the future. So you see that, of course, the fraudsters, they never stop, and maybe they now see new opportunities. So with these measures, for instance, the postponement of the VAT payment, at the same time with those measures, you also give more time to fraudsters to operate and to disappear from the picture. And then later, it's very difficult to find them, to claim them that they should pay some VAT. So here, my recommendation to businesses will be that they really have to implement risk management and tax control frameworks in order they don't see them suddenly involved in a VAT fraud scheme. So they really have to take care, especially with regard to their new suppliers or new clients, take care to be diligent and to really test and prove that they are businesses that are in the market, that they have a VAT number, that they have premises, etc., etc. So they make sure that there is no fraud in this operation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jordi, for these very useful insights, both for governments and for businesses. I think that well, we learned quite a lot from you today. For the time being, thank you very much, Jordi, for being here with us, and thank you also for the viewers for tuning in. And I'm wishing everyone good health.